Hello and welcome everyone to TechDaily.ai. It is great to have you with us today as we unpack some absolutely massive news coming out of Cupertino. I'm David.
And I'm Sophia.
Before we get into the main event, we have a quick message for our listeners.
We do.
You can sponsor this podcast for just $25. Your message will be featured across major platforms like Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, and more. If you're interested, visit TechDaily.ai to get started today.
Short, sweet, and to the point.
Exactly.
Wah.
Now let's get right into it. I want you to, think back for a second. The year is 2011. You've just got an iPhone 4S.
Mm-hmm.
You hold down that button, and a voice talks back for the very first time. It felt like magic, didn't it?
It really did. It felt like we were finally living in the future. Star Trek, right in your pocket.
The years went by, and that magic, it kind of wore off.
It did.
If you've owned an iPhone in the last, 15 years, you know the drill. You ask a question that is slightly more complex than what's the weather and what happens.
You get the dreaded phrase, here is what I found on the web.
Right.
Or worse, it completely misunderstands you and starts calling your dentist at 11 p.m.
It's the era of the glorified search bar. We've been stuck there for over a decade. But looking at the reports flooding in this morning, and it is January 23, 2026, by the way, that era is officially over.
It is. We are looking at a total brain transplant. The reports coming out of Bloomberg on iOS 27, which Apple is internally calling Rave, and macOS 27, codenamed Fizz.
Rave and Fizz. Okay.
They suggest this isn't just a fresh coat of paint, it's a replacement of the underlying organs.
So we aren't just polishing Siri, we are burying the old Siri.
Pretty much. They're scrapping the old command and control interface for a fully generative AI chatbot experience.
And the internal project name for this is Campos?
That's the one, Campos. And it fundamentally changes the physics of how you use the phone.
Okay. But help me understand the difference here. Because for the last 2 years, we've all had ChatGPT or Gemini apps on our phones. We know what a chatbot is. How is this different?
That is the billion-dollar question, and the answer is integration.
Integration.
Think about how annoying it is to use a third-party AI app right now.
Yeah.
You're talking to it, and then you accidentally bump the screen, or you have to switch apps to check an email.
And the conversation's just gone, or the mic cuts out. It drives me insane. It feels like this little island, totally separate from the rest of my phone.
Exactly. It's what we call context-switching friction, and Apple knows this. In fact, the reporting shows something really fascinating. They actually built a standalone chatbot app first.
Wait, really? Like an Apple GPT app?
Yes. It was codenamed Veritas. They built it, they tested it internally, played with it, and then they killed it.
They killed it. Why would they do that?
Because they realized that a bolt-on app just isn't the Apple way. If you have to open an app to use the AI, that's already too much friction. So Campos, this new Siri, it isn't an app.
It is the interface.
It is the interface. It lives at the system level. You can be in Mail or Photos or Safari, and the chat overlay just persists. You can't close it by accident because it's woven into the OS itself.
So it's less about having a chat buddy application and more about having this layer of intelligence that just sits on top of everything.
Right. You still say Siri or hold the button, but instead of that little glowing orb waiting for a specific command, you're entering a fluid conversation that supports text and voice at the same time.
Okay, but let's talk utility. Because fluid conversation is great marketing speak, but what does it actually do? I mean, I want my life to be easier.
The utility comes from that system level access. This is where Apple is trying to leapfrog everyone. We call this Agentic AI.
Agentic AI.
AI that can act as an agent to do things for you, not just tell you things.
Give me a concrete example. What's a wow moment that justifies all this?
Okay, take the Photos app. This is a classic pain point. Right now, to edit a photo, you have to open the edit menu, find the crop tool, slide the exposure bars. It's manual labor.
And half the time, I just make the photo look worse?
Exactly. With Campos, you just look at the photo and say, crop this to a square and make the colors pop.
So it's controlling the user interface for me.
Yes. Or remove the background and send it to Mike. It collapses 5 or 6 different tags and swipes into one single sentence. But the real wow moment in the reports, the one that really made me sit up, is about cross-app reasoning.
Cross-app, like moving between apps.
Imagine you are in Mail. You can tell the AI, write an email to my wife about our upcoming calendar plans for the weekend.
Okay, stop there. So to do that, the AI has to leave Mail, open the calendar, read the data, understand which weekend, I mean, synthesize it, come back to mail, and then draft the text.
Precisely. It's multi-step reasoning. That is the holy grail. We've been promised this for a decade, but because apps are all siloed,
They don't talk to each other.
they don't and never worked. But now, with deep integration into things like mail, music, podcasts, and even Xcode for developers,
Oh, developers must be losing their minds over Xcode integration.
it's huge for them. Imagine describing the function you want and having Xcode write and insert the code in real time. It's like pair programming with an AI that lives inside your laptop.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
But for the average user, the biggest change might be file analysis. My phone is a graveyard of PDFs and screenshots I can never find.
And that's the use case. Instead of scrolling forever, you just ask, where's that insurance document I saved last week?
And it doesn't just look for the file name, right?
No, it parses the content of the files, it reads the PDF, sees that it's an insurance policy, and just serves it up. It's semantic search for your personal life.
That is incredible utility. I'll grant you that. It solves a real problem. But, and there's always a but with Apple, how are they pulling this off? Because let's be honest, Apple has been miles behind on AI.
No, they were. They were too busy building VR headsets while the world moved to large language models. And this is where the story gets really, really spicy. The engine powering all this is officially called Apple Foundation Models version 11.
This is very proprietary, very Apple.
It's a very nice label, very polished. But if you peel that label off,
What's underneath?
it's Google.
It's Gemini. You're kidding.
It is essentially built on Google's Gemini 3 technology.
I have to pause on the irony of this. We all remember Steve Jobs. He hated Android. He called it a stolen product. He promised thermonuclear war on Google.
He was ready to spend every dime of Apple's cash to destroy them. They were the ultimate enemy.
And now, here we are in 2026, and the brain of the iPhone, the flagship feature, is being outsourced to that very enemy.
Yeah.
It's not thermonuclear war, it's a licensing deal.
It's pragmatism. Apple got caught flat-footed. They had two choices. Spend 5 years and $50 billion trying to catch up, or swallow their pride, license the best model, and put an Apple wrapper on it.
But that wrapper is the only thing that matters to me. If this is Google's brain, does that mean Google is seeing my data? Because I don't pay a premium for Apple just to have my data harvested.
That's the key question. And according to the reports, Apple has drawn a very hard line. They're using what's likely a private cloud compute model.
Okay, explain that to me like I'm 5. What does that actually mean?
All right. The code, the brain, might be Google's architecture. But it's running on Apple servers or in a completely locked down environment where Apple holds all the keys.
So Google provides the engine design, but Apple builds the car and locks the doors.
Exactly. Google doesn't get a copy of your write an email to my wife, request to sell you flowers later.
Okay, good.
Reportedly, no. The data pipeline is severed. And there's another huge differentiator, retention. If you use free ChatGPT, your data helps train the next model.
Right, I'm the free labor. I'm training the beast.
Exactly. The new Siri is designed to be ephemeral. It has the memory of a goldfish, by design. Once the task is done, the data is flushed. It doesn't build a profile of you in the cloud.
That is a massive selling point. We're smart, but we don't remember. I like that.
And when it does search the web, the reports say it's going to use citations like Perplexity. It won't just steal content, it'll point you to the source.
So on paper, this sounds as a home run. You get Google smarts, Apple's privacy, Apple's integration. It sounds perfect. But we looked at the community reaction this morning. People are not universally happy about this.
Not even close. There is a very vocal segment of the user base that is just shouting, "Enshittification."
It is the buzzword of the decade for a reason.
And it fits. The argument is, I bought a phone to be a tool, not a companion. They're terrified that adding a chatty AI to everything just makes the device more cluttered and addictive.
I saw one comment that really stuck with me. The bacon guy. Did you see that one?
The bacon guy?
Yeah.
Yes. A classic dumb phone argument.
He literally said, I just want to know how long to cook bacon. I do not want to have a conversation about the history of cured meats. Just set the timer.
And he's right. Efficiency is a feature. If I have to negotiate with a chatbot to do a simple task, that's a step backwards. Sometimes you just want to switch, not a conversation.
There's also a much more serious concern about accessibility. We saw some parents weighing in.
Yes, this one is heartbreaking and technically very valid. Parents of dyslexic children. Right now, Siri is a lifeline. They ask, how do you spell receive? And Siri just spells it. It's a fact.
But a large language model is a probability engine. It guesses.
It hallucinates. Parents are genuinely worried that if you replace the dictionary with a creative AI, it might confidently give the wrong answer. You can't trust a probabilistic model the way you trust a deterministic script.
That is a huge problem. If Siri lies to me once, I'm never using it for anything important again.
Then you have the hardware anxiety, the M1 panic.
Ah, yes, the liquid glass effect.
Right, these beautiful new shimmering graphics that glow when the AI is thinking, and everyone with an M1 chip is thinking, great, my phone is going to melt.
It feels like forced obsolescence.
Okay.
Here's a feature you didn't ask for that slows your phone down so you have to buy a new one.
Whether it's true or not, the perception is there. And speaking of buying new things, who is paying for all this compute power?
That's the economic elephant in the room. Siri used to be cheap. Now, every query is running through a Gemini-class model on a server farm. That costs real money.
It costs billions. Every time you ask it to edit a photo, a server rack heats up somewhere, and Siri is free.
I do not pay a monthly subscription for Siri.
Not yet. The speculation is Apple just eats the cost for now to keep you in the ecosystem.
Yeah.
You buy the phone, that subsidizes the AI. But long term, the economics are brutal.
So we might see a Siri Pro down the line.
I wouldn't bet against it, or it's part of that billion-dollar deal with Google, but ultimately someone has to pay the electric bill.
It's going to be a fascinating rollout.
Yeah.
iOS 27 lands in September, revealed in June. So we have a few months to brace ourselves.
It's going to be everywhere. Your email, your code, your photos.
You know, as we wrap up, you mentioned something earlier about Agentic AI that's been nagging at me.
What's that?
If this actually works, if Siri writes the email and edits the photo and codes the app, what do I do?
That's the existential crisis, isn't it?
Seriously. Right now, we are the users. We use the tool. But the tool does the work. We aren't users anymore. We're just middle managers.
We become supervisors of an automated agent. And then the scary part is the atrophy of skill. If the AI always edits your photos, do you forget how to use the exposure slider?
If it always writes your emails, do you forget how to be diplomatic?
And if the server goes down or the internet cuts out, are we just helpless?
We might be outsourcing our own agency to the machine.
We gain convenience, but we lose a little bit of competence.
On that terrifying note, I think I'm going to go set a manual timer for my pasta. I don't trust the AI with my carbohydrates just yet.
Smart move. Don't let the robot overcook dinner.
That is all the time we have for today. Thank you for listening.
It's certainly going to be a wild year.
Indeed. Make sure to head over to TechDaily.ai for more updates. I'm David.
And I'm Sophia.
See you next time.